7 p.m. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the March 8th, 2021 City Council meeting to order. Because of COVID-19 restrictions, our meeting tonight is being held virtually via Zoom. Public comments for this meeting were accepted in advance by mail and email. These comments will be read into the public record shortly. If you would like to submit a public comment for our next meeting, please visit www.merriam.org and follow the directions listed there. As a reminder to the City Council, please be conscientious of others trying to speak. Speak slowly and clearly and state your name prior to speaking. If I need to confirm something that may have been difficult to hear, I will ask for clarification. The format for tonight, or for the council consideration on items tonight, will be staff presentations. Then I will open time for council questions. Please hold questions until the end of the staff presentation. If you have a question when if you have a question, when I ask for them, please physically raise your hand so I can see it on your video. And we will go to the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll break to the flag, I'll get us started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Julie, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Sissom.
Here.
Councilmember DeVold.
Here.
Councilmember Hands.
Here.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Here.
Councilmember Naff.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Here.
Councilmember Pape.
Here.
Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Here.
Very good. Next is our public comments. And Julie, would you please read any public comments that were submitted in advance into the record, please?
Yes, Mayor, we have 5 public comments this evening. Our first one is from Stuart Hines, 8600 West 60th Street. It says, I am writing in strong support of the plan to install a WeGo swing in Chatelaine Park. I am the uncle of a special needs niece, and I am intimately aware of the many obstacles facing individuals with physical challenges. A swing like this would offer a sense of normalcy in a setting that does not typically provide, and would be another opportunity for Merriam to tout being just right for all of its citizens. Please vote in favor of this innovative and progressive project. Our second comment is from Janelle Bowers. She's the Chief Development and Operations Officer for Friends of JCDS. It says, Friends of JCDS, a local nonprofit that creates affordable and accessible housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Johnson County, was very excited to see a recommendation for a WeGo accessible swing at the Chatelaine Park. Friends of JCDS has a home in Merriam, 5738 Mackey, where 3 of the residents utilize wheelchairs. The ability for them to enjoy the park is an incredible gift and shows thoughtful development by city leaders. Personally, I am also a resident of Merriam and applaud the effort. Inclusive building and planning is crucial for building thriving communities. When we make accommodations for those who need us most, we improve society as a whole. The next comment is from Christopher Leach, 8600 West 60th Street. I am also a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I support inclusive parks in Merriam, Kansas. Our board recently voted to recommend to the City Council to install a WeGo accessible swing at the Chatelaine Park in Merriam. This is an accessible equipment that does not require transfer for wheelchair users to enjoy. It would be the first of its type in the region. I am so grateful to live in a compassionate and forward-thinking city like Marion. So often we force specially abled individuals and their families to go to work for the accommodations we are providing. The We Go swing permits wheelchair users to enjoy the swing as they are without transferring out of their chairs. The swing is also accessible to non-wheelchair using individuals. I applaud our Parks Department for researching this innovative and meaningful enhancement, which will make us a regional destination for many families. I heartily endorse your approval of this recommendation. Okay. The next one is from Lavera Howard, 7117 Schweitzer Road. As a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, I am asking that you please consider our recommendation for the playground equipment at Chatelaine Park. I feel that the addition of the We Go swing is a much needed swing in our parks. We had a lengthy discussion and voted 6-1 that it would be a great way to go. It is a much needed inclusion of equipment for handicapped children, something that is lacking in both our parks and parks in other cities. And then the last one I have is from Jason Barber. He is the adaptive sports coordinator at the Whole Person. It says, the purpose of this letter is to offer complete support of the Parks Advisory Board's recommendation to install a We Go accessible swing at Chatelaine Park in Marion, Kansas. Play is an essential part of every child's development. Too often, children with disabilities are excluded from play opportunities due to lack of accessibility. These opportunities are not only important for a child's physical development, but social development as well. Being able to socialize amongst friends help develop social skills that last forever. The installation of the We Go swing will make it possible for wheelchair users to participate without having to transfer out of their chair. Providing this element of inclusion would provide opportunity for families to enjoy one's life's simplest pleasures in being able to play together in the park. This swing would provide accessibility for children with disabilities to play amongst their peers in a way that is currently not possible. With the ability to swing with people that are not disabled in tandem, this swing also provides a level of integration that is too often unattainable. In addition, the swing would give parents and family with a disability the opportunity to more actively participate in playing with their children. Here at the Whole Person, we envision a community where opportunities and choices are not limited by disability. Access to our public parks and public recreation programming is essential for the health and wellness of all citizens, including those with a disability. The installation of a fully accessible swing in Chatelaine Park would be a great step forward in achieving this vision. And that was the last public comment.
Very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under the heading are considered to be routine by the city council and may be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separate. We have 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. So I will ask the council if anyone wishes to remove any of the items. Mr. Silver?
I'd like to remove item 2, the street improvement one, for further discussion.
Okay. Any others? Anyone else wish to, anything else removed? Okay, we'll remove item number 2 and I'll entertain a motions for items 1, 3, and 4. Mr. Pape?
This is Bob, Mayor. I'd move the council approve consent agenda items 1, 3, and 4.
And second, Ms. Hands?
Yes, I'll second that.
We have a motion second, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember DeBold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Nath,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
I'm really happy to see the West Vernon Place study on there, and I enthusiastically vote yes on this.
Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. So now we'll take up consideration of consider approval of bid award to JM Fahey for the 2021 street improvement projects. Mr. Silvers, did you have a question?
Yes, with the passing of, can you hear me?
Yeah.
With the passing of the 2040 comp plan and and Miriam's interest in having a complete streets plan in place, I just wanted to ask whether or not there is consideration on changing the sidewalks at 73rd off of Frontage Road. I see that anyone walking that sidewalk, especially if they're in a wheelchair or elderly, will have to turn up 73rd Street and, I'm sorry, it might be 74th. My map is not showing the street. And they'll actually have to walk 171 feet up that street to get to the entrance to a parking lot before they can go back west on the sidewalk to continue south on Frontage Road. And this is West Frontage Road. I'm sorry, East Frontage Road.
I can answer that. That street is actually a private street owned by the hospital. So we just have the approach right there. So we can't make any adjustments to that private street there.
But can the sidewalk on the south side of that road be extended straight to, can you tell me if it's 74th Street or 73rd Street?
It's 74th.
Okay.
70.
Instead of forcing people to turn and go east before they can cross the street, is there any way that sidewalk can continue straight so it can be a direct path across 74th Street?
I'm looking at the plans. I couldn't remember exactly why we didn't do that. I have them here in front of me. There's a bunch of obstacles on that corner on the north side of 74th Street. Looks like there's some utility boxes in that area, and we couldn't get an ADA ramp to fit in that area to allow pedestrians just to cross straight up on that road.
And as part, now that we're talking about complete streets, there's no way that we can have utilities adjust where their equipment is, so we can make it easier for handicapped people and disabled people and elderly people to use that intersection.
If we were going to do that, if we knew we needed to do that when we started this plan, we could have asked the utility companies to do that. A lot of times it takes 6 to 8 months ahead of time for them to move their utilities, because that's a power box for some of those businesses that are right there. So it's not an easy move. And we kind of talked slightly about this when we selected our engineer and we went for bid that this street wasn't going to be part of our complete streets or as pedestrian friendly as we'd like it to be, just due to the layout and the amount of vehicles on that street.
Okay, I understand. I do ask that in the future, if it's possible, when planning things like this, that we do take our complete streets plan into consideration and deal with situations like this that make it difficult for people to be mobile.
Oh, yeah. We definitely took that into heart, and that's our plan for our first discussion with all the engineers from all the projects going forward.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Jim, I might ask something again. I'm not totally familiar with the exact location. I do know that in many places in the city, we've had to go back and reinstall ramps, particularly when it became ADA required. And it wasn't unusual for us to tear out a portion of concrete to make the replacement and make it appropriate. perhaps at some future time, we could ask the utilities to be moved and then go back and redo that specific area. Would that be possible, do you think?
Yes, we can reach back out, and maybe we can reach out to the hospital to see if they want to make some adjustments. Just because just to the east of that utility box is on the corner is their property, and they may want to partner with us. I mean, it's not our right of way, but some of that sidewalk is theirs. So we can definitely reach out to that, and that's something that we could do in-house
Right.
if we need to.
Right, well, I think unless anyone feels otherwise, I'm not saying that needs to be on a definite plan for this evening, and it shouldn't have any impact on this particular issue, but I would say maybe work on doing that. So a year from now, it'll be done, that way at least we'll get it done right.
Yep, not a problem. I'll reach out and see what we can do.
Mr. Engel, does that sound appropriate?
It does, just so I have the location down, is this the location right next to the sign into Advent? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's at 71st Street and the East Frontage Road.
71st?
Sorry, 74th, yes.
Okay.
The plan
Yeah.
looks like a box or a sign.
Yeah, on Google Earth that I'm looking at, it looks like they have their big sign right there that says 9100 West 74th Street, but there is a box there and there's a light pole. So, but yeah, if we can get them to move that box, we can definitely try to see if they'd be interested in helping us out that way.
Okay, well, then if there are no further questions, I'll ask for a motion to accept this, Mr. Pape.
Yes, Bob. I will make a motion that we accept consent agenda item number 2, Mayor.
Do I have a second? Mr. Silvers.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Nath,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVoe.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. We'll move into the mayor's report. I have an opportunity to read a very important proclamation for the record, and I'll go ahead and get started with that. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Merriam, like other communities across the great nation, has dealt with and continues to endure the impacts of COVID-19, and whereas many of us have either been infected or have known someone who has been infected with COVID-19, and whereas individuals, corporations, organizations have provided humanitarian assistance to ease the pain and burden of people and families due to COVID-19, including staffing drive-through food banks, providing rent and mortgage assistance, aiding their neighbors, and more. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is virtually dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials. And whereas healthcare professionals, educators, grocery store employees, restaurant staff, delivery drivers, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, public works, park and recreation, and community services public servants, and so many others have worked continuously and have taken extraordinary steps to ensure the health and safety of the entire community and provide essential services. And whereas our community is built upon those individuals who contributed, whose contributions have been, quote, just right. And whereas I wished I could personally meet and greet each and every one of you and express my appreciation to those who have made such positive impact on Merriam during this historic pandemic. Now, therefore, I, Ken Sissom, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of Merriam, Kansas, do hereby proclaim March 7 through 13, 2021 as Heroes Week in the city of Merriam, and urge all citizens to take time and thank those for their selfless commitment and determination to comfort, serve, and ensure our well-being. Proclaim this 8th day of March 2021. Mayor Ken Sisson. Okay. A lot of truth in this proclamation. Thankfully, and it looks like things are starting to ease up, so it's been a difficult year. I don't need to tell any of you that, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to next move to the Police Department Annual Report. Chief McLaughlin, how are you this evening?
Good. How are you, Mayor and Council? Hope everybody's doing well.
Doing great.
I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully here we can all see a little PowerPoint presentation I put together for some highlights. There was a lot of information in our annual report, and I just wanted to pick out some things I thought were important as it related to 2020. And of course, you know, the major thing that we had to deal with was COVID. And I wanted to point out some of the things that we were able to do, some things we think may have been affected a little bit by the situation that transpired with the COVID. Community policing, our department has always been a very community policing oriented organization. And COVID presented some interesting problems for us in order to for us to continue to do our community oriented policing activities. Some things that were affected were Coffee with a Cop. We didn't have as many Coffee with a Cops programs as we normally do, but we were able to get a couple of those in. But where there's problems, there's also opportunities. And one of the things that we implemented because of COVID was something called birthday parades. We did over 101 birthday parades for people in our city that because, you know, they couldn't have birthday parties. Our officers would drive by and with the lights and sirens on and a little parade and wish them happy birthday. And that was a huge success. So that was one of the ways we were able to adapt. We were able to get a 10-week Citizens Police Academy in. It was a little change. There were some of the things that we normally did in our Citizens Academy we weren't able to do, but we were still able to get 12 participants in and go through the police academy, and that was a good event. We also were able to participate in what's called Operation Rudolph. That's a program where area schools select a couple students that may not be able to have a good Christmas because of financial issues, and they're sponsored, and we take them to the store and they get to shop, and then we get food for the family so they can have a nice Christmas dinner. We were able to do, I believe, 2 students from each of our 2 schools this year. So that was a good thing. And one of the things that I'm very proud about our department is we do a lot of charitable work. Special Olympics is our #1 charity that we support. And even though, again, there was issues with trying to get together and do fundraisers, we were still able to do safe events, and we're able to raise $15,000 for our Special Olympics. So that was, again, thinking outside the box and still able to have an impact on our community. Just some pictures there from Operation Rudolph, and the one picture there on your left is we were also able to do a drug take-back program. Again, people really like that, where we're able to set up and people would turn in their prescription drugs and we get them destroyed. And again, we were able to do it safely in the restrictions of COVID. Crime stats. We saw we saw quite a bit of increase in property crimes. crimes against society, that's things like drug possession, DUIs. Person crime stayed about the same, a little bit of a drop by one reported crime. And again, probably the increase in property crimes is due to the number of people out of work. We think usually when you have a bad economy or something like that happens, those kind of statistics generally do tend to trend up. The other thing we found is that in 2020, we had, unfortunately, one of the highest DUI arrests in for as long as I can remember, but at least in the last 5 years. We arrested 230 DUI related cases. Officer Susi, who is a drug recognition expert, he's trained to recognize people under the influence of drugs as well as alcohol. Because of that, he made 109 DUI arrests just by himself, and he was had more DUI arrests than anybody else in Johnson County. So he did a really good job, and our officers as a whole did a good job. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of people out there drinking and driving during this time of the year. Accidents were down 29%. Again, probably related to COVID. I'd like to be able to take the credit for that, my officers, but there was just less traffic, at least during 4 or 5 months of this year when the lockdown started. So less traffic tends to relate to less accidents. Our crash locations is again, you've seen these locations before along Shawnee Mission Parkway, Johnson Drive, 75th Street, Antioch, and 67th. There's no surprises there. We named an officer of the year. Officer of the year is I really don't have much input on who makes officer of the year. It's done purposefully that way. Officers of the year nominated by fellow officers and supervisors, and then it's nominations sent to a committee made up of officers and supervisors that make the final decision. This year, I'm happy to announce, was MPO Jared Ruby. One of the events that Jared was involved with was a life-saving event, which is listed on this board. Jared also is one of our training officers, and he really stepped up last year and helped train our department, which is one of the reasons why he was named Officer of the Year. So congratulations to him. We've already given him the award. Again, this COVID thing, this is one of those things I usually like to do in front of the council and show him off because he deserves it. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now. Also to mention is Officer Bates and Officer Castaneda also received life-saving awards this year. So, despite everything that's going on, our officers are out there helping the community, doing what they need to be doing and actually saving lives. So congratulations to them. I'm very proud of them. And it does reflect wonderfully on your police department and the quality of people we have working for. 2021, what can we expect? Well, moving forward, we're going to continue to efforts to reduce accidents. Again, I can't stress how much I believe that community-oriented policing is valuable to our citizens, valuable to our department. We're going to find ways to continue to increase our availability in the community other than answering calls for service. And again, if schools ever go back in-person learning on a regular basis, we definitely want to get back into our schools. That's one of the things we really missed last year, was not being able to be in the schools, interacting with the children on a positive basis like we do. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them about anything else that's in the report. But I think overall, your officers did a great job in dealing with COVID and trying to find ways to continue to do those things that the Marion Police Department is known to do, especially with the positive interactions with our community.
Very good. Thank you for your report. Another excellent job. Any member of the council have any questions of the chief this evening? Chris? Oh.
I'm just saying, if we were in person, we would be applauding. So thank you very much. Please let the officers know that we're applauding.
Yeah, they did all the hard work. I just get to talk about it in front of y'all, which I enjoy doing, but man, they did all the work this year. So I really do appreciate the efforts they put forth.
Well, and the mayor just declared you heroes for this week, so you're in good shape.
All right. I appreciate that.
He was a hero long before I proclaimed it. Thanks again, Chief.
Thank you.
We're going to move to council items. And the first item is consider approval of the purchase of play equipment for Chat Lane Park. We heard a little bit about that earlier from our public. Anna, will you please provide a staff update on this item?
Yes, I will. Good evening, Council, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen this evening with a brief presentation about the agenda item before you. I know you heard some things about that in public comments. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So what I would like to do is just kind of run through the options that were presented briefly to Park Board and how we ended up on this recommendation before you this evening. In 2020, we were supposed to make a replacement of the Chat Lane swing. With everything that happened with COVID, we paused that project initially with the intent of possibly doing it in the fall. And as we know, as the year went on with COVID and the new community center, we made the decision at that point to completely defer it until 2021, which made it difficult to then program it for 2021 because the budget had already been approved. So what we're recommending this evening is that the money that had been budgeted to replace the park's vehicle be the funding source to do this project this year. And then we will catch up the van hopefully in 2022 if budget allows, but we'll just kind of move things down the line, which we knew could potentially happen when we deferred this project in 2020. The original project in 2020 was just to replace the swing as it is, which is a 2-bay swing with 2 belt swings and 2 bucket swings for toddlers. That's what exists in all of our parks. Landscape Structures is the preferred vendor for this because then all of our swings are the same swing with the same replacement parts. Since we were able to be strategic with the community center, when it passed as a tax initiative in 2017, we had started to reserve special parks funding with the uncertainty of what equipment we might need to buy, what we might need to subsidize through a different funding source. So since that funding was not needed for the new community center, that's where the additional funding to upgrade this project will be coming from. And so we looked at what our options were if we were to upgrade to something that would become more accessible for our disabled population. So we chose Chat Lane Park as a good park to do this, and not only is because it's time for that replacement, but it's very visible to the community. It's a well-utilized park, and it also is going to provide something unique to Johnson County. So I'm going to show you 2 videos of the 2 potential, what they call accessible swings that are offered through Landscape Structures. So as I move to that, I'm going to explain what these 2 structures look like. So the first video you're going to see is one that requires the participant to actually transfer out of. And this swing is called a friendship swing. And it's a front-facing swing. It can be pumped by an able-bodied person, or it can be pushed. The second one you're going to see is the WeGo swing, which is the one that is being recommended by Park Board. And that one is truly an accessible piece that doesn't require the participant to transfer. They stay in their wheelchair or their mobility device, and an able-bodied person can sit across from them. And it's pumped using the arms of a participant. So I'm going to quickly show these 2 videos just to kind of give you a visual of what Park Board, how they made their decision. So I'm going to share a new screen. Apologize with the pause in technology. Sometimes I'm a little slow. And
Mama.
hope everybody can hear and see that. Let me know if you can't.
Just say yes.
That is pretty cool.
Roller? You don't have an own. Whoa. No. You're gonna swing? Come here.
Mama.
Sorry, we don't need to see it twice. And the second one is the WeGo. And this is the one that is being recommended from Park Board. It's a little bit longer of a video, but it shows several different options as to how those in a wheelchair would use the device.
I just saw him. What do you ever think you would actually do in your life? With Scorpion. This is right here. With Scorpion. Oh, that's a good thing. I am 5 years old and I think this swing is amazing. I like this swing also because any wheelchair person can go on it and any person that even doesn't have a wheelchair can go on it. Yeah, and we can all play together.
All right, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation. And hopefully it stops. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Sorry. Knew that was going to happen when I did that. Stop. That did not happen when we practiced tonight. I apologize for that. That's usually how my technology will work. So, all right, so now we're back to the presentation. Well, of course, we're back to the beginning. All right, so this is what the rendering would look like with the Friendship Swing. It's still going to be on one pad and they would all be in the same bays together. And then the rendering with the WeGo, it is a separate structure, but it would still be in the same pad. They would still be side by side.
Anna, you need to advance the slides.
Oh,
We're still on project options.
are you? That's not what it's showing on my screen. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
Can you see that now?
Nope.
Okay,
There
how's
you go.
that?
There.
Okay, there was something else that was paused that I didn't realize I had done in the meantime. This is an exciting adventure. So anyway, let's go back here. So this is the Friendship Swing and it is the 3-bay. Everything is together, same pad of concrete. And then the WeGo is also the same pad of concrete, but because of the stability and the anchoring required, it is a separate structure. So then we looked at the budget. And so this is kind of how the budget would play out. Once the project is approved for whatever, Public Works will destroy the existing structure, and then we'll analyze the pad to see if the existing pad can be utilized and salvaged. If the existing pad can be salvaged, the 2-bay swing is just a matter of buying the equipment and then installing the equipment. The 2-bay with the Friendship would still have to have an additional pad poured because it's an additional bay larger, as well as the WeGo swing. And so that's the difference between salvaging the original pad to the new pad when you look at kind of the cost difference. Obviously, the WeGo is a more expensive piece of equipment than the Friendship Swing. There are Friendship Swings currently in Johnson County as close as Antioch Park. There is nothing like the WeGo in the metropolitan area. It was just released by Landscape Structures in 2020. And so we would be the first literally in the metropolitan area to install this. So it would be a draw to the city. It would be a very progressive project because as even the park at Shawnee Mission Park, that is what they consider their inclusive park, it has the Friendship Swing. And when we were kind of reviewing comments on that, there was comments by children that said it would be fun to swing without having to transfer out of my wheelchair. So we could be meeting a need within the community as well. As we've discussed, this would be paid for out of the equipment reserve, which is where the swing was originally budgeted for in 2020, but using the van money. And then the remaining portion of this, whatever would be required, can be managed out of the equipment or the Special Parks Fund from the reserve that we've built up through the past several years, as well as what we're, a small portion of what we're intending to receive this year as well from Special Parks funding. So here's kind of how that would break down as far as our funding sources would go and where we see that money coming from if we have to use the entire budget of $85,932. That of course includes a 10% contingency in the event that we find things that go wrong. That's always standard in the budget. So I am willing to answer any questions at this time, but that's the recommendation of Park Board is to purchase the WeGo with the 2-bay swing with 2 belt swings and toddler swings with the safety surface from Athco and McConnell and Associates to pour the concrete. And then we're asking that staff have the authorization to execute those agreements.
Very good. We got some council people with hands up. I'll try to go in the order I noticed them. Be sure you just state your name before you ask the questions. Let's start with Bob Pate.
Yeah, this is Bob. And this is very unique. I'm highly supportive of this whole process, and it's kind of exciting to be the first to do something now instead of following somebody else's footsteps. But is there any grants out there since, for special needs, federal grants, state grants? I assume you probably looked at it. I don't know if there is or isn't, but I know that wasn't a funding source mentioned. So it seems like it should be. I don't know.
There are no, because we're going for a landscape structure piece of equipment, there are some playgrounds that have offered inclusive grants in the past, but there are none available right now that I could find.
Okay.
That met our timeline to get this project done.
I just want to make sure we had looked. I didn't know if something out there existed like that. Okay, thank you. That's all I
Before
had.
we go to Chris, could you not share your screen so I can get everybody to see them?
Yep.
Really?
I can do that.
And next is Chris Hands, followed by David Neal. Go ahead, Chris.
I too am very supportive of this, and I'm delighted that you found the funding for it in our budgets. I watched the WeGo video this afternoon. It's delightful. I am curious, when someone approaches that, do we think it's totally intuitive? Are there instructions? How do we communicate how to use the swing?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's intuitive, but I would imagine that if this is approved, it will be a significant story in the metropolitan area. I'll work with Jenna to do some communications. We will probably not only just push things out on our website, we will also look to do something in the metropolitan area. I'm not sure, swings typically don't come with instructions. you know, that it is one of those things that sometimes the playgrounds will come with rules, but I've never seen anything with instructions. But we'll do our best to make sure that we're, you know, putting some information out. And depending on when the project is done, we can even do a, maybe look to do a ribbon cutting or something, depending on what's going on with COVID, how we can maybe have some special events centered around its completion.
I just am concerned that if I just approach it and I'm grandma and my child and we're the only ones there, that it's not going to be totally intuitive how it all works. So.
Well, I would imagine that it's kind of, I mean, when I look at it, it looks like the bucket swings we had as kids on our swing sets, where you used to sit across from each other. I don't know, the little basket seats. Anyway, so I imagine people will figure out how it works. But
except it has the hand pumping the arm.
When you sit down in it, you have to pull the hand down in front of you like a safety belt.
Right.
So when you sit down, those come down in front of you, and that's where the pushing mechanism comes from. So
okay, just from my point of view, I would just encourage you to explore how intuitive that everyone seems to experience it. That's all.
Okay, we'll definitely look at that.
Mr. Neal, you're next, and Bruce, you'll follow up.
Again, I wanted to also say I'm supportive of trying to do anything we can to enhance the usability for all members of our community. And so I applaud that effort. One of the questions I had in looking at the video, it appears to me that the WeGo swing is essentially doesn't actually have a swinging motion where you're actually going laterally and then up. It's just more, looks like more back and forth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I just seeing it wrong?
Well, it's a swaying motion. So yeah, it doesn't go up like the pirate ship at the.
Well, like the friendship swing goes up and goes up. It has a more swinging, traditional swinging motion. I'm assuming is that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm in any way against it. I'm just curious. Do we have any other group swing apparatus at the park that does have more of a swinging motion? It would seem to me that possibly we may be trading an enhancement for one group of people, but taking something away, possibly because it's not quite as thrilling for other people. So, and that's not necessarily a reason to think differently. I just kind of wanted to know if where else do we have maybe a group swing that actually goes up in the air a little bit and has more of a motion to it.
So at Chat Lane Park, actually, there is something called a palmetto swing, and it's like a net tire swing. And so several people can sit on that, and that does have more of the swinging motion. So if someone wanted to transfer out of their wheelchair and has the ability to sit up and hold themselves in that swing, that would give them that back and forth more motion that I think you're looking for. Versus it is not uncommon that because of the logistics of what you're looking at with a wheelchair in a swing, this is taking something. It used to be that the wheelchair swings was one wheelchair locked down and it did the same thing as this one does, but it was just one wheelchair, and they were always, it was a challenge just because you can't get that momentum up with a wheelchair and provide the stability you need and the anchoring you need to keep everything in place.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to find out some other options, and there seem to be, so that sounds good. For other other folks to swing.
I can tell you from experience, I've gone on the palmetto, or whatever you called it, with my grandchildren. It very much takes the place of the swing, and you get full motion, maybe more of it than you want at times. So I think the thing about this particular item is that it's new. There's probably only one of these around that it sounds it's new enough. I doubt that there's much competition in terms of it having the ability to have more than one wheelchair person in it. So is that, I mean, do you have, I guess one of the questions was, is there anything else like it on the market? Do you know, Anna?
I'll be honest, I didn't research what other swing set manufacturers use. I just know that the original wheelchair swing that they would install like in the 80s and early 90s, when ADA first came out, it had to be bolted down, like literally chained off, and you had to have a staff member there to actually let a handicapped wheelchair person use. So this is actually full ADA, meets all full ADA requirements in the fact that you roll up to it and you can use it as without asking for help.
Okay. Mr. Caldwell?
Yeah. My question is actually about the other swing set. But first, I support the swing set, and we often think of these things as making it accessible for the children. What I saw in that video was an adult who was able to swing with his children, which I think is really a great thing for us to provide. But back to the other swing set that we're replacing, why are we replacing it?
For several reasons. The safety surface is failing. It was one of the original poured in place surfaces. And so the technology of 18 years ago, it's just outlived its life expectancy. So it's time for that surface to come up. When you replace the surface, that swing is also, the paint is starting to chip and it's having some issues with it as well. So it's also starting to show its age. So when you replace the safety surface, you typically, it's only a couple $1,000s to replace the swing set at that time. So this would upgrade the swing set to the single bay, the single post that we have throughout the rest of the parks.
Okay, so when I was looking at the structure of the swing set, thinking it was okay, I was looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah,
I should have been looking at the
safety
area around it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Silvers.
Yeah, this is Councilman Silvers. Basically, all my questions have been answered, and like everyone else, I think this is great. But I also wanted to congratulate the Parks and Rec Department. I noticed a bunch of soccer nets at Brown Park, and I think it's great that that a lot of stuff is happening in our parks, and I wanted to thank you.
So the soccer goals had to be moved from Waterfall because we're seeding Waterfall Park. So we were looking at an opportunity to accommodate some soccer practices, and that was the best option we could do. So that's why they're temporarily located at Brown Park.
Well, I still love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion in a second. Bob Pape.
Mayor, this is Bob Pape. I would move that the council approve the purchase of play equipment and safety service for Chatelaine Park.
Scott, you were first.
Scott Diebold, and I second that.
Motion made and seconded, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Nath.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Diebold.
Yes, very much so, yes.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. Can't wait to see it. Next item is consider approval of an ordinance authorizing the sale, consumption, and possession of alcoholic liquor during certain parks and recreational special events. This item is a first reading. If you have read it or if you have questions, we have staff here to answer them. Otherwise, this is just simply a first reading and does not require a vote. Any questions? This is a process that we go through. Whitney Yadrich.
It's just a really silly question, but I noticed that the parking lots are not in the boundaries of the little red zone. And I didn't know if that was on purpose or if, like Whitney, don't read into this. Or,
Yes, that was actually done on purpose
okay,
because we don't want people taking alcohol to their vehicles.
that's a great reason. Thank you.
You know, it's really nice that we are having conversations about activities in parks and recreation again. So even though we still got a little while to go, we got to make plans. Any questions?
Something else,
further?
Mayor, sorry.
Yeah.
Also, Whitney, the majority of those parking lots are gone.
I know that. Yeah.
So I did want to say that as well, that,
Yeah. The
updated.
olden times Google. From
yes.
here.
Google.
Yeah. No, we should not encourage people to bring alcohol to their vehicles.
Okay, well, then that's first reading, and this will come back. You can have a chance to think about what's there to think about, and if you have questions, we certainly will entertain them at the next meeting when we bring this up for the second reading. Item number 3 is consider approval of the 2021 council goals and objectives. Chris, would you please provide the staff update on this item?
I sure will. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council. The next item before you is consideration of the fiscal year 2022 goals and objectives. As Council is aware, staff solicits about this time of year goals and objectives for the upcoming budget cycle to help department heads and staff develop the budget for 2022 and achieve the goals of the City Council. This year, there were 5 submissions for consideration by the council, 2 modifications and 3 additions. I thought what I'd do is I would just briefly talk about each and then open it up for any questions or debate. And if necessary, we can just go through for approval of each one, or if someone wants to make a motion to approve all 5, that is perfectly fine also. First one will be the modifications. So the first modification that was suggested was a modification to 3.4. 3.4 is improved safety for all modes of travel throughout the community. 3.4A is create and maintain a well-connected transportation network that includes efforts related to walkability and bikeability. That's the existing verbiage. The suggested addition would be with emphasis placed on identifying safe opportunities to cross I-35. I think that was an outgrowth of conversations we had during the intersection ordinance conversation about it is pretty tough to get across I-35 in some locations. Now, clearly, this is not something that we can just magically make happen, but I think making sure that it is top of mind awareness and that as the possibilities exist for road construction or bridge construction and Shawnee Mission Parkway specifically being KDOT, we should have our eye aimed towards a little bit easier pathway east and west through our community. So that'd be the first suggested modification. Second, any questions about that that I can answer?
Chris Hands.
Yeah, Chris Hands. It's just semantics, but to say to cross I-35 just sounds to me like we're going to be figuring out a way to cross it. We want to be able to access either side. I don't know. The word just bothers me. I don't know if there's a better one.
We can try to wordsmith that if we've got good, smart folks that do great things with the English language. Let me task them with that. Any other question? I think another council member Neil, maybe.
Yeah, I just want to say, well, first of all, suggestion maybe traverse over as opposed to cross. That might work. I don't know. I certainly think this is something that, and I appreciate Council Member Silvers bringing it up. And the last time, I've paid attention to it a lot more since then. And I do think very definitely this is something that we should be able to do. I know it's hard. It's very hard. I don't know how to do it or how expensive it's going to be, but being able to traverse over I-35, I think would be helpful for our community.
Or even under.
Or under, yeah.
On 60, on Johnson Drive, or, yeah.
Yeah, we we will look and see if there's a better way to say that we don't have to necessarily use too many words to convey the same message.
Mr. Pape, had you ever hands up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would, yeah, Mayor, this is Bob. I was just going to say that I think it was also identified as a, in our 2040 vision plan that better ways to traverse our community to get across I-35. So, yeah, it's definitely something that we need to look at and support that.
Sure. Great. Second modification that was suggested was 2.2. 2.2 currently reads, it's under provide exceptional service delivery. 2.2 says recruit and retain the best talent available within Northeast Johnson County. Suggested modification to that would be to say recruit and retain the best talent available within Northeast Johnson County that best reflects the diversity of our community. I think that is something that we do find value in, but I think it's something that having a modification to the goal, that when we're talking about recruiting and retaining talent, that it should reflect the diversity of our community. So that would be one suggested modification. Happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification.
Anybody? That speaks for itself. Okay. Very good. Go on.
Okay. Thank you. The next three are additions. These are things that would be not necessarily modifications. They would be additions that staff would go back and try to build into the 2022 budget. So we attached a little bit of research with that just so council would know what we were talking about. First one is to hire our own full-time mental health co-responder. So we have a co-responder that we share with other Northeast Johnson County cities. They are primarily housed out of our station, but they are, it is a single individual and they split time between several cities. The current cost, it's a Johnson County employee, the current cost is a little bit north of $30,000 a year. That is our share. The actual cost is larger and again shared across the cities. If we were to make that employee if we were to make that position a FTE on city staff, the year one salary and benefits would range somewhere between about $86,000 to $100,000. The key driver of that difference being primarily their health care. It's going to matter if they come on board and they are single and they just access single health coverage, they'll be on the lower end of that scale. If they come on and they have family and they access the full suite of benefits that we offer our employees for healthcare, it will be on the high end of that. The additional cost would be about $1,000 for uniforms. And then there'd be a $30,000 vehicle that we would need to purchase for them. They do house, the current mental health co-responder does house out of our house. I think that's the right word, does operate out of our police department. So they already have really a workstation in there. So we wouldn't necessarily need to carve out any space for them. We would just need to get them a vehicle and get them hired. That is in conversations I've had with the chief. I think the chief thinks that there's a benefit of that person being a Johnson County employee versus a staff employee, just simply because the chief doesn't necessarily know how to supervise mental health co-responders. It's not within his wheelhouse. It's not something that we couldn't learn. We couldn't figure out how to gauge success. But I think having, if the council would like us to have a full-time co-responder, I think having one that is still a Johnson County employee might have some benefits also. Having one that stays a Johnson County employee might save us a little bit of money, but also we would be less responsible when that person leaves, takes another job, retires, whatever it is. We can just say, hey, whoever, Joe, Sue, they're gone, they're retiring, they've moved on to greener pastures. We would like another co-responder, and then the effort need to be put into finding a mental health co-responder would fall upon the county as opposed to the city, if that is something that the council would like. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Bob, your hand is up first, Mr. Pape.
Yeah, Councilman.
I'm up,
Councilman
sir.
Pape.
Yeah. First Bob, then Scott, then then David.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bob. Sorry about that, Bob.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, my question, I guess, is how, and I definitely think we moved in the right direction in getting a mental health co-responder and, to assist us, obviously with the growing issues of mental health. But my question, I guess, might be directed toward the police chief, McLaughlin, in reference to how often does the current system that we have now not, the person's not available, isn't there, that we need them more often? Is it, I guess, my question is the benefit of a full-time employee necessary? Is there, I guess I just want to hear from you.
Well, there is benefit to having a co-responder available the majority of the time, but we have other resources available to us when our co-responder is not there. We have the Johnson County mental health hotline, which our officers call and can get advice and they can see or talk to the individual that needs help. So it's not like if a co-responder is not there, we're lacking resources or ability to work the problem with mental health professionals assisting us. The biggest benefit outside of them actually showing up to calls is the follow-up. Mental health co-responders really earn their worth in the follow-up with the individuals we have contact with to lessen and limit the repeat calls we get. So they do that follow-up therapy where they make sure they're going to their appointments, they're taking their medication, and that thing. And so that doesn't necessarily have to be done the day that we have the initial contact. So, based on what our call activity is right now, I'm not so sure we need another full-time co-responder on our staff. What I would like to see us gravitate towards in the future, the near future, with the other Northeast counties, is maybe hiring a second co-responder for the Northeast. Estimate, put them on 10-hour shifts so that there's overlap, and that we get weekend days covered and things like that. So that's where I would like to see it go. We're in contact with Johnson County right now and having those discussions about needs and things like that. But the true value of the co-responder is more the follow-up work they're doing with our clients after the crisis is over, to prevent them from having to call us again. We have to go out there again and again and again. So right now, I don't really see the need of putting one full-time on staff with us. I would like in the near future to maybe look at adding another one for Northeast Johnson County as a whole.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott, I think you're next, followed by David.
All right, thank you, sir. Scott Diebold. I have some questions just for everybody to kind of think about. Some, and Chief, most of these will be, some thoughts I'd like to hear from you. In the documents that you put in the packet this week, we had 325 calls, mental health calls in 2020. That was in the document that we received this evening. The co-responder that we shared was only involved in 84 of those. They did do 128 follow-ups, which we said is important. We know that's as important, if not more important. But that still leaves 197 mental health calls that were not dealt with by a direct co-responder. Would that be a true statement?
Not necessarily. So some of those may have been dealt with because we got them either committed and they were a patient of Johnson County Mental Health. And so the follow-up was not done by our co-responder, but was done by their caseworker. So I could give you, I don't have those numbers in front of me and I don't know how hard or easy it'd be to get those, but our co-responder only reaches out after the fact that they're already not a patient of Johnson County Mental Health. So they help get them, into the system and make sure that once they're new to the system that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But they already have a caseworker assigned to them. that's handed off to that caseworker, and that caseworker takes care of it. So we don't really see those numbers.
Okay, so some of that follow-up is done by a caseworker
Correct.
through correspondence. Okay, that good. I'm glad to hear that. I think the big thing that the question I'm asking is, and I kind of like the idea of not just having one and sharing 4 counties. I brought this up thinking we could be a leader, and maybe we can bring a couple other counties in with it, and we'd be the leader of having a second one. But again, I still think there's some of the reasons we're having a co-responder is because when an officer, an armed officer in a uniform can and does intimidate, right, a mental health patient, so forth. And again, I'm thinking about the future with my son, my grandson that has autism. Okay, he doesn't speak. Again, if he gets threatened, he does certain things. So to me, as looking at it from that standpoint, okay, where those officers could either remain in a car, could stay back behind a car, where that individual that is not armed, not uniformed, would present a more calming situation, which I believe was the reason that corresponders were put in place, was to help with those situations. Is that correct?
Well, co-responders don't go on calls by themselves or without us there with them. So
yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
again,
we're there. We're a presence. No doubt that the co-responder has more training than our officers do in dealing with the various different aspects, and having them there on the scene when they can be is definitely a benefit. However, I will also state that, things are a lot different today than they were when I started in 1989. I didn't receive any mental health training as an officer. I probably didn't receive mental health training until I was in here 10, 15 years into my tenure. Now our officers receive a lot of training, a lot more than I would have ever imagined necessary or needed. But so we do a pretty good job when we don't have the co-responder with us to recognize what we're dealing with and calming things down, and not, being aggressive, promoting an aggressive response from people. I do believe that, like I said, I think we'll get there. We'll have another co-responder available to us in the Northeast. I don't know when. We're working with, Overland Park's only got 2 or 3 for their large city and all the calls they've got. Olathe is the same. So, it would be nice, but I don't know that it's necessary to bring one on for just our city right now. Things change, and we always need to watch it and look at it and evaluate it. I'm just not convinced right now that bringing one on just for us is necessary.
Okay, and again, I do fair. I know, okay, and just from experience that with your leadership and our officers do a good job, because it's obviously you don't see us in the news from a negative standpoint, because we do things right. And I don't want you to think that I'm bad mouthing our officers. Again, I love those guys to death. They're from my day one, when I stood up in front of the council and said I wanted to be a council member, I said, support the police if you do nothing else. And that's one of the things that I said. And again, I just want to make sure that we are serving the community in the fullest capacity that we can. And if that means we get our own and sacrifice picking up, tree limbs one year, okay, to do it, then I think it's worth that. Again, I'm throwing stuff out there, but I think it's important that we, again, make sure that we are doing everything, all right, and making sure that the current situation is providing, the needs that are out there. So again, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Mr. Neal?
Councilmember Neal. I was, I guess I sort of share some of the concerns of, Councilmember Diebold in the sense that not that anything's being done incorrectly, but sort of the emphasis on follow-up. I get that is really, really important. My concern is avoiding the situation where you have a mental health crisis where maybe the individual may not be calm. You know, he may be having a crisis that's more escalated. And, you know, I don't know, of course, how much training every officer has. I don't know sort of the dynamic in terms of how we're currently using the co-responder. So part of my question was how that actually works now. And also if, how many of the mental health calls we had involved people who were in a highly agitated state, which could then be misinterpreted or not possibly, we're having someone with some training to recognize what was going on, and maybe in a position of kind of a restraint might have a positive effect, because obviously we don't want to have that first incident where, you know, something goes horribly wrong. So that's kind of my, you know, again, the numbers of calls versus the numbers of involvement with the part-time person. Could you kind of address that a little bit for me? I'd appreciate it.
I don't know. I don't know the percentage of who's in, you know, of calls where we're dealing with someone's highly agitated or versus not. It is the co-responder and the officers work as a team. And so, you know, the officers are as much involved with the co-responder in calming the situation down. It's not like the co-responder shows up and takes over and the officers are just kind of in the background protecting her. It really is a team effort between the two. Our officers, you know, over half my department is crisis intervention trained, which is I believe it's 80 hours of training on how to deal with mental health issues. In addition, we receive additional mental health training across the board for all of our officers. So we do a pretty good job of identifying a crisis, a mental health crisis, and de-escalate as much as we can. The fallacy is and a co-responder would tell you this, not even a co-responder can calm down a person in crisis all the time. That's why they want us there, need us there, and will not go without us there, because there are times where you just can't calm someone down and you have to use as little forces you possibly get away with to get them under control and get them in a safe environment so they can receive some help. So if I weren't confident that I thought our current situation wasn't good and needed immediate additions to it, I would tell you, because I agree with everything that's been said here tonight. You know, mental health care, right, wrong, or indifferent, has been shifted from the way it was handled when I first got here to now it's a law enforcement-ish responsibility, which is why we now have co-responders. That's not the way it should be. And until the state and the federal government decide to change that dynamic by funding mental health treatment and making facilities available, unfortunately, that's in our lap right now. And it's in your lap because you have to fund the solutions to make sure that we have the tools we need to do our job and that our citizens are getting some sort of help, whether, you know, so it is a hybrid system. It is working. It could be better. And I am looking at ways to do that. And trust me, I've been thinking about this as long, you know, when we got the first one, trying to figure out when we can get it, add another one and how we would make that work. So I'm not anti another co-responder. I just, at this point, this time, I don't, to be honest with you, I wouldn't know how to supervise or manage a co-responder. They, you know, that's the benefit of having them through Johnson County, is that their supervisors are all mental health experts with college degrees, master degrees, doctorate degrees, and that's their business. And so, again, like I just said, it's not our business. We dabble in it, but it's not our business. So in addition to hiring the co-responder, you're going to have to hire someone or train someone at the department intensely on what mental health, social work aspects, so that we would know whether or not our co-responder is doing a good job. You know what I'm saying? So I think keeping it with Johnson County Mental Health is the best way to do it, as opposed to just hiring our own. And I think someday, sooner than later, we'll have a second one on board. It's just the way things are trending. I think that's going to happen. So.
Okay, Chris Hands.
There's not a whole lot I want to add to this, but I totally agree that mental health should be, our co-responders should be housed in Johnson County with other mental health experts, because the co-responders' mental health will also be helped by being with their peers. And if this is not problematic, currently, I'm now confident that Chief will continue to work with the county to say, we need more, knowing that we then will be able to come back and fund the way we have the first one. So I just as soon not add this to our goals.
Okay, I think I saw Whitney Godrich.
Yes. So I'm sorry about my voice. This is Councilmember Godrich. Please include my coughing in the minutes if you have in this space. So I want to semantically, I think it would be great if, I know we are calling out mental health a lot, but I want to recognize that mental health is health, right? So it's part of the health of our community and the health and wellness of our community. And I see a great theme with these goals. That is, these goals and objectives, that is the theme. It's a reflection of the city's commitment to empathetic and progressive leadership. And I think that's great. And I'm really happy about it. I'm just trying to sort out in my head which of, if we have this recommendation in here, right, this addition, we know that we haven't been able to properly address or make contact with or have a mental health co-responder on all of our mental health calls. But we don't take this opportunity knowing that in 2022, then we would have to wait until 2023 to reconsider it. Is that accurate? So this would be for 2022 hire?
This would be, we would build this into the 2022 budget, but I mean, the council, we could approve the 2022 budget on a Monday and the council could ask on Tuesday to fund anything that's not in the budget, and we would find a way to make it happen. But yes, structurally, if we wanted to build this into the FTE count as part of the budget process, it would be a 1/1 of 22 funded position.
Okay. I guess my concern is that I worry that there's an opportunity that we could be missing to fill a gap, but I'm not the expert in how to fill that gap. You know, like, we can't just call up the county and say, hey, we turned down an FTE, so you can add another mental health co-responder to help us out with our calls that we can't make. And, you know, I just saw in the legislature, the Office of the Child Advocate didn't make it out of the House for turnaround day. And there's, you know, DCF calls in our, Lefty has input, there are DCFS calls in our reports and everything that we see. So I guess my question is, if we don't include this, which I'm open to, obviously, either way, what is the solution in the meantime, other than waiting on the county?
I guess I would, to find the solution, I would need to know exactly what the problem is that you want solved. Do you want a mental health co-responder on every single mental health call? Because I would defer to the chief, but I would say that if we have one or even two, there's going to be some gap in the scheduling. I mean, because I mean, mental health, I mean,
you can't work 24/7. Yeah,
right. So I mean, so I guess that would, for me to help find I guess, what is the nature, what are we trying to accomplish, and that would give me some guidance.
So my question is that this wasn't something that I had recommended for the goals and objectives. So when I first saw it in here, I was thinking this discussion would be a valuable place to ask questions pending the direction. I am trying to reconcile the having this be on the addition section of our goals and objectives with the chief saying, right, chief, that you're saying, I don't think this is the right time for us to have this additional employee, with what gap that leaves if we don't have those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And the chief, I think, can know better what that gap means.
So, you know, and I agree. I guess I should have explained this a little better. My goal is to eventually, working with Jessica Murphy at Johnson Camille, who manages our co-responder program, to add a co-responder. However, I was thinking of adding it through Northeast Johnson County so it benefits all the cities that are currently in the program. In order to do that, we're working on numbers to see where we can justify the addition of another employee. And those other agencies or other cities are going to have to agree to fund the additional costs. So there's a little bit of a lag time and all that. And those are things that those discussions are going on, you know, in various different levels as to, you know, where our numbers at. And you know, once we get to the point to where we believe we've got enough data to justify adding another employee, then those conversations with the other cities will go that way. Now, if the other cities decide they don't want another co-responder, and I think we need one, then I will come to Chris, and Chris and I will come to you all and say, here's where we're at. Northeast doesn't want to fund another one, but we think we want one. Here's why. And if you all choose to fund it, that's what you're there for. So, but that's the process. It just takes a long time because we got a lot of entities involved and things like that. So if that helps.
Mr. Neal?
I guess another follow-up question would be, currently, what kind of hours does our co-responder work? That's the first question. Then I have a sort of a follow-up thought after you tell me kind of a little bit better about the schedule. Is there a specific time? Are they there during the daytime, or because I know for follow-up work that might make more sense, or are they there during the peak crisis time? Or if there is such a thing.
Right. She works a split schedule, so there are 2 days during the week. She's there in the mornings from like 9 a.m. Until 5 or 6. And then the other day she's working in the evenings. I think she gets off at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. In the evening time. So she does work a split schedule. So you're right. So she has, can make those contacts, those follow-ups, and then also be there during, the evening hours when we get more calls for service.
So,
Chief, would it be?
Go ahead, Mr. Neal. You had a
Go ahead
follow-up.
and ask a question.
Well, I apologize. My question was going to be, what was the?
So, I guess one of the. Okay, go ahead. I didn't hear what Mayor said.
No, Mr. Neal, go ahead and do your follow-up question, and then we'll fill in from there.
Okay, so I guess the concern, nationally is sometimes that traditional policing is taking on roles that, sometimes they're not best suited for. And I think, the sense that I have just in general is that we want to provide the resources as a community that most effectively address the broadest range of problems. And the mental health problems, obviously I know folks who have mental health problems, and I feel like sometimes as Council Member DeBold said, that sometimes, enhanced knowledge would be helpful. So the discrepancy in the number of, of incidents that we have and the number that are responded to by Johnson or by our co-responder concerns me. That this is an issue that crosses many jurisdictions. Is there a way that instead of being so specific and saying hire one full-time additional person, we can put in our goals something to the effect that we increase our capacity in some manner for co-responder response, so that it matches more closely with our numbers. That gives you the ability to pursue a different approach. But yeah, I'm just uncomfortable with leaving it the status quo.
I think, I don't know if that was a rhetorical question or not, because I think some of it's already been answered. I got a question, and then I'll ask Chris Evans to have her, or Evan Hams to have her question. But in our current situation, is our co-responder overworked in your estimation, Mr. Chief McLaughlin?
No, her numbers are comparable to the Prairie Village, Leawood co-responder as it relates to all the cities she's serving here in Northeast Johnson County.
And has she come to you and said, "Hey, I need some help"? Is there any way we can get some more help out here?
No, and we've had this discussion, and I've had this discussion with her supervisor, and we're continuing to looking at it, and it's an active, discussion that we're going to keep an eye on and discuss, as to when our numbers get to the point where we believe it makes sense, not just for Merriam but for the other cities that are involved in this program, to add those expenses. And like I said, if she comes to me and says, yeah, it's time, and the other cities don't want to participate, I'll be coming to you going, we need to add one, but it's going to be on our dime, not collectively like it is right now. So hopefully we can get buy-in from everybody else, and it won't be that. But like I said, it's a good program, and I do want to see it expanded. How that and when that looks like, I'm just not 100% sure right now. So.
And then one last thing, when we first started talking about co-responders, and I know this point was made, but maybe it needs to be underscored, especially with all the news on the national front about tragedies that could have been prevented, perhaps, if a co-responder was present. And believe me, I'm like you. I operated my entire tenure without co-responders, and you just figured it out on your own. And I got by without having to do anything very rash. And I dealt with some pretty bad cases, but Johnson County is a model community in the nation for the way we handle our people in mental crisis. There are very few communities that have co-responders in this nation. It's a growing trend, and believe me, there are places where they need many full-time co-responders and they couldn't keep up. This county isn't one of them, but yet because of the resource capabilities and because our community is progressive and responsive in this matter, we do a job much better than any of the counties that touch our borders by far. So I can understand why the council wants to do the best and wants to do more possible, but I guess my question is, I would think first we need to recognize that there's a need, because there's a financial side to this to consider. And we need to, obviously if we need them because it's a good thing. But if we're not at that stage yet, I think probably our goal should be to always maintain this vigilance for having you come forward to say, look, it's time that we need to increase our services here because we can't keep up. Because I think we would have a much different conversation. We all want to do what's right, and I think this is a great idea. I just don't know if this is the time, and I'm restating what's been said. And it may be that you can refashion the way it's in this goal so that what I just described is in there. Somehow keep an eye on it, increase it when we see it's required. Chris Evans, Hands, did you have something?
I'm just going to tag right on to that. As I recall, when the whole program started, when we were really sharing a co-responder with all of the Northeast, I am not sure that we had budgeted ahead of time to join that program. And so I want to assure other council people who haven't been around as long that when the opportunity arose, we were able to make it all happen. If it would add a degree of comfort to say, let's set aside another $30,000, which is what our contribution is to the current person, so that we are ready to go when that opportunity arises, then I certainly support that.
Mr. DeBold?
And I agree with that too. I mean, listening to the chief, and obviously I trust his judgment. I threw that in there because, again, just because, as you had talked about some of the national things going on, and since I've been on council, we've been leaders in a lot of different things, and that's one thing I enjoy about being part of this council is that we do some things maybe that other people aren't doing, and just because we know it's good for our community. So I would like to see us, as Ms. Hands has suggested, have it in there, because as Chief McLaughlin says, is that he doesn't know when that need might present itself. It could present itself before 2022, and if it's in those there, it's, you know, again, a very low dollar value of 30,000. Again, who knows if that'll be the same? I mean, obviously we're guessing there, but I think it's something that's there. I think it's there as a fail safe, so that we don't have to say, hey, let's pull from there or pull from this, and you know, something that we've already budgeted and then all of a sudden can't do because this takes a priority over that. So I think already, so I like to see it reworded a little different, as Ms. Hands has said. Would be a good thing.
Okay. Anything further on this issue, Mr. Neal? Mr. Neal, go ahead. You get your, yeah, there you go.
I just wanted to clarify that that's what I was trying to get across, that maybe we should change the language, you know, when I was rambling a little bit earlier, to reflect the goal of increasing our capacity, funding and increasing capacity as needed, so that we have some sort of, so that we're still keeping it at, you know, in our mind that's something that we may need to do. And that was what I was trying to get across. So if we can change that and still have something in the goal to reflect that interest, that's what I was trying to get across.
Mr. Engel, did you think you got enough of this to come up with some idea? Okay. All right, well, why don't you do that and bring it back, and we can go from there. And you can go ahead and carry on with the next edition.
Sure. Next suggested addition for consideration by the council is the addition of one more police officer that would be assigned to the night shift to help monitor the businesses along Merriam Drive after hours. Year one salary and benefits for a starting officer is going to range somewhere between about $70,000 and $84,000. Again, that's going to depend on healthcare and what benefits they access. Additional cost would be uniforms for a new officer, clearly a little bit more than a co-responder. So initial outlay in year one could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $73,000 to $87,000, depending on if they're what level of healthcare they access.
Mr. Debo?
Yeah, Scott Debo, and I turned this one in as well. I'm going to play the bad guy tonight, I guess. One of the business owners that I deal with on Merriam Drive brought this concern to me. Was that we hear in the news about the catalytic converters being stolen on a regular basis, and in our city as well. And again, very difficult to police, very difficult to prosecute as well, from what I understand. If they're not just an officer standing there and the guy's got the catalytic converter in their hand at the same. So I think that's my understanding. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But the concerns that were presented to me by one of the business owners and then a reference that he made from other business owners that he has spoken with is that it costs them money. Insurance, with deductibles and those kind of things, it becomes an out of a pocket cost for them as a business owner to replace catalytic converters. Now, there may be other things that can be done to help with some of this, and I don't know everything. That's why I wanted to put it in here and I wanted to talk about it. And again, it was presented to me that maybe having a presence, that presence being an officer that could patrol those businesses in our downtown area. That and again, I couldn't give you any kind of numbers as to dollar values or incidents. I'm sure the chief has a list of all those incidences. I'm sure there are probably multiple, but my thought is, is it something to look at? Can we do something for our businesses in the downtown that are taking a hit? They're taking a hit financially because of that. Now, again, how much insurance is covered, how much they get a chance to write off on taxes and those kind of things. Again, I don't have specific numbers for you, but I know one of the things that was presented by Mr. Engel in about 2 weeks or 2 meetings ago was that business is part of our revenue, that our businesses present or provide 10% of property tax revenue in our city, and residents are 8% of that, if I'm not mistaken. So again, and not saying this because they pay more, they deserve more, but I think they do, some consideration when they're being, not sure what the right word is there, but when they have a concern, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So again, I'm throwing it out there again. I'd like to hear some other people talk, especially Chief, what he thinks on that, because I threw this one out there. So thank you for the time.
Chief, you want to cover this? You want me to see what Mr. Pape wants to say?
Yeah, you can talk to Mr. Pape. I'll answer after he's done.
Mr. Pape?
Actually, Mayor, this is Councilman Pape. I was going to ask the chief what his view was on it. I think Councilman DeBold is correct in that we have to try to, stymie the loss of, catalytic converters and all other crime. My concern, I guess, is specifically saying one police officer just in the evenings for downtown Maryland. I have a little issue with that. And if we need more police officers, obviously, I'm very supportive of the police department and the safety and deter crime in Marion. But I want to hear from Chief McLaughlin.
So, yeah, this is an interesting question, proposal. It's always one of those things you look at, and when the council's talking about adding FTEs to your department, and you're like, hey, usually you're talking about trying to pull FTEs. However, so the thing that we have to be cautious about is when we have a crime spree that goes through, and this is not an uncommon thing, like when the economy goes bad, or you just have groups of individuals that come through and carry away half the city over a period of time. These things are cyclic, they happen. And the where you don't want to get into a problem is where you knee-jerk reaction, you hire an officer that's going to patrol where. It takes 45 seconds to steal a catalytic converter from under a car. So what business am I going to sit that officer at? And then when catalytic converters stop walking away and they start stealing cars from car dealerships, they're going to want their own officer just to work their issue. And then it becomes a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down. And the main reason is because unless crime starts trending up in general for a period of time, and our calls for service are getting out of hand to where I'm blacked out all the time, that's the type of things that you look at to justify whether or not I need to add another FTE or two or whatever the case may be. you don't look at it from isolated incidents, and there's always property crime. Miriam Drive, the apartments, the car dealerships, anywhere there's businesses or a congregation of cars like at apartment complexes. What you do is you divert the resources you have to start stymieing the outbreak of the rash of crimes, which is what we did. And then you settle back down to what is routine patrol, and you look at your areas, but you don't start staffing extra people because you went through a crime rate. Because if that were the case, you guys are going to have 50 people on the police department before you even know it, if you start operating that way. So I appreciate the thought, and I understand the sentiment. I am not clamoring for another officer right now. Our calls for service are relatively stable, if they have been over the last 10 years. They fluctuate. They sometimes they go down, sometimes they go up, but on average, we're staying relatively consistent. And I think our current staff of officers is sufficient. And outside of these rare occasions when we have these spikes in property crimes, I think we can manage with what we have. I can't ever promise, nor will I ever promise, that we will eliminate property crimes. This can't happen. You can't have enough officers for that. But we do our best in following up. We have added systems in place like our LPR cameras to help us investigate these crimes after they occur if we don't catch them on the spot, and then lock them up down the road so that these things stop happening. So when I think I need to add officers because of those things I just said, I will come to you. You guys know I'm not shy. So if I need something, want something, I will ask for it. Chris knows that. I don't think right now we really need to add another officer. I don't think our calls for service justify it at this time.
Thank you.
I guess the only problem I have, but maybe we'll conclude with this, is that just the concept of having a goal that's specific to adding police force, an area for a specific problem. I think we would be better served as a council if we had a goal to strengthen our department in an effort to reduce crime in general, and then we can always direct the chief on what that means. Because again, if we add an officer, that officer is not going to go away when the trend goes away. We can't say, well, we aren't having any of these thefts anymore, so we don't need your services anymore. You're fired, because that person's going to be on the payroll until they leave, and then they're going to be replaced by somebody else unless we change our FTE level. This is a problem that's regional wide. I asked the chief here last month, where are these catalytic converters going? There's somebody in Kansas City that's buying them on a wholesale basis, because if there weren't people buying them, there wouldn't be people stealing them. And why haven't they done more to try to find the fencing operation? And he indicated that there's a couple of possibilities. They're not on this side of the state line. But I think from a regional police perspective, they should be a clampdown on trying to get that changed, or maybe a change in the law. These are salvage operations, and they're controlled by state law. That can be eliminated through the legal process of making it illegal for them to purchase a catalytic converter. And again, once that happens, people will quit stealing them because there's no value in them. But that's kind of a solution to a larger problem. Anybody else got anything to add? Okay. I guess we probably need to do something with this item or give you some direction. If Mr. DeVol doesn't mind, I think maybe we'd be better off pulling this for now. I think when our crime, and again, our crime stats have gone up. I mean, we could probably say, look, there's actual reason for this. I would maybe, and if I thought hiring a police officer would fix it or even help the problem, I think I'd be all for it. My fear is that we could hire an officer and the crime stats could be worse after we hire them, just because our efforts aren't put in the right place, because you never know where crime is going to occur until it's reported the next day. You know, we respond to crimes. In most cases, we don't prevent them, and that's always been the case. Anyway, that's what I'm
Oh, I'm
thinking.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, pardon me, I apologize for interrupting, but I agree with that. I think, again, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of support there for that. Again, I know our officers do everything they can. Again, I say it again, I support them 100%. And there's no, okay, I wanted to make sure I brought that out because it was brought to me by a business owner. And I think it's important. They're obviously a very important part of our community, and they deserve a safe environment, just like a resident does. And I believe that totally. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. But I think, again, at this time, I trust the man's judgment. He said, we're good. Again, I'd like to see us, if there's something we can do for them, let's do it. I mean, and I don't know what that is. I'd love to sit down and talk with the chief. I know that because I'm sure I can bite your ear right off your head. So, but
you know where I work.
I'll stop right now. I'll stop. I'm sorry.
You know where I work. Come on in. We'll chat.
All right, let's move down to the next item.
Sure. The third addition that has been suggested is to participate in Mark's Community of All Ages Recognition Program with its community engagement activities. There's Mark's Community of All Ages is a pretty robust program that it does exactly what it says. I think it's geared primarily to the more tenured population of the city, but it is truly to make sure that no one is left behind, and that there are opportunities for us to make sure that as we make infrastructure improvements and then the variety of changes that occur in a community, that we're being mindful that there are people of a variety of ages and abilities. Specifically, the community engagement activities, I included the attachment in there that kind of spells those out. That's specifically pulled from the Community of All Ages from the MARC website. Those are engagement activities that we would absorb into existing resource streams. We could that's not a problem with it. Something we could do. Happy to answer any questions that I might be able to answer.
Seems like a overall general good idea. We've already actually had a discussion about our efforts on the sidewalks, and I think a lot of times you don't think about the things you're doing. We've been supportive of our seasoned citizens for many years through our community center and other efforts, but there's always room for improvement, especially when you have an entity like MARC that can bring ideas from all over the region that maybe we had thought of that we could improve upon. Does anybody have a problem with this remaining? Ms. Hands?
No, I'm the one who wanted to add it. We are already doing a lot of the things that are included. This just formalizes it so that we can get recognized for our efforts.
Very good. Go on, Mr. Engel.
So just to clarify confirm what I think I heard here this evening in terms of our goals and objectives. In terms of the first one, look and see if there's not a better way to explain crossing I-35, whether that's traverse, access both sides, whatever it is that we can come up with, but that might be a better descriptor. We're okay on the best talent that best reflects the diversity of our community. In terms of mental health co-responder, there was a request to just put $30,000 in the budget and find some way to wordsmith that in anticipation of potential future needs, that money is earmarked for a mental health co-responder. The additional police officer we're going to pass, and then we will embrace the Community of All Age community engagement activities and memorialize those somewhere in the goals and objectives. Specifically, the mental health co-responder, just for clarity, we generally don't put things in the budget that we don't intend on spending money on. That's why we keep large contingency budgets. But I just want to make sure the expectation is that we actually have a line item that is a mental health co-responder contingency. Just, I guess, so we can say that that's what we thought was valuable.
You know, that may be, you can certainly look at it that way. That's probably the most extreme way. But I think if we were to put in there in terms of a goal that as a council, we would like to, I guess, reserve the money theoretically in concept. So if something were to come up, where we would not hesitate to go into reserves and gather that money as needed. And we're doing that more as a goal or a policy.
So make the statement more so than actually put a line item in there, because I mean, we have millions of dollars that we can tap into.
I think what we've discussed as a council and made clear, at least my belief is that we feel this is a strong and important topic that needs to be funded when it's necessary. And we want to send that message to you, and you put it in a goal so the public will understand that if a need comes up, we're going to find the funding for it, because we have. And I know that putting it in the budget creates a special challenge in the finance department in terms of accountability and whatnot, which most of us wouldn't understand, because that's getting pretty deep in the weeds on finance. The world of finance.
We can clearly, well, we can do our best to find a clear way to include something that to summarize all of that in the goals and objectives. Again, just with the council's understanding that we absolutely have that funding available. We don't necessarily need to create a line item within some other budget. That money is available, just so council is aware of that. But we can make sure that that's part of the goals and objectives, which is part of the budget document. We can make sure that it's clear in there that is something that the council is supportive of, and should the need arise, we can pull the trigger on it.
Everybody okay with that?
Is that head nods? Is that going to reflect what we're looking for? Okay. Then that being said, if I'm hearing everyone right, I think we could do a motion to approve as reflecting the conversation this evening.
All right, then I'll ask for a motion. Chris Hands.
Yes, I move that the council approve the 2021 council goals and objectives as we have discussed and agreed on this evening.
Bob Pape.
I'll second, Mayor.
Motion made second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Nath,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. CIP update. You know, one of the values of being placed so late on the agenda is by now we got the council all tuckered out, and they're not near as feisty, and ready to argue. And so I'm gonna let Jim McDonald take over the meeting now and tell us what's going on in the CIP world.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have just a few highlights and milestones for the 2021 Street Improvement Project that you all approved this evening. That bid was awarded to J.M. Fahey to complete that project in 110 days. We felt that was pretty important. The quicker they can get in and out, the better. The contract completion date is October 14th. The exception to that is the mill and overlay on Craig Road. We specified that that work had to begin once school was out and had to be completed before school started. When we initially set those dates, school was to be out somewhere in June. And so they've kind of moved school, letting them out a little bit earlier this year. So those days may adjust, but they will be, that road will be completed while school's not in session. And then we have our pre-construction meeting on March 10th, and we're meeting with our contractor to get their planned construction schedule, along with any utilities that need to be moved, and see how that works out with everything that we have going on those projects. And then we have our open house meeting style, open house meeting, which is going to be open house style at the community center on April 1st at 5:30. We reserved the larger room there. So we're going to allow the public just to come in and out for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we're going to have plans spread out so they can just meet, talk specifically about their locations or concerns, and then we can get them moved back out. So that's all I have on our update for now. I'm free to answer any questions on that or any public works related items.
Any questions? Bob?
Yeah, and I apologize. I was going to call you just this, but since I see you and I didn't call you. The street sign at 65th Street in Antioch, they're going into to the apartment complex. Is that their sign? It's been knocked over for a little while. You've probably already seen it.
Yes,
I don't know if that's ours or theirs, but I see this.
And they're aware of it, and they're responsible to replace that.
Okay, I figured that was the case. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, so you're off the hook again.
Nice, thank you.
Staff items, Mr. Engel, do we have any staff items this evening?
Just two quick items. Just a reminder that likely at the next meeting, we'll be bringing forward governing body rules. That was something that's been shared with the council in the past. Again, we will bring that forward to the council with the changes. We can't really do a red line because we really did revamp the governing body rules. That was something that came out of our retreat last year that council was interested in seeing those. I want to thank Julie for her efforts in that. But just as a reminder, if you want to spend a little time going through those, if you're having some trouble sleeping, that's be a good time to review those between now and then. So we can enter the meeting next time actually speaking a common vernacular of the new governing body rules, or at least the recommended governing body rules. And then I have received ETC surveys. They are fantastic. As I shared 3 years ago, in many categories we dropped simply because it was so high 3 years ago, but we are still above where we've been in the past and all of our neighbors. So if you want to, and I will make a presentation next meeting on that, but I just wanted to let you know we have those and they look great. Again, compared to where we've been in the past, other than 3 years ago when we just completely crushed it. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't have any other updates.
Just one reminder too, we will be engaged in our very first Zoom executive session at the next meeting. I'm not sure at this point how that's going to transpire, but it will be to cover our city administrator's evaluation. So that will be right. And you'll have copies of that final project before the meeting, so you can look at them in case you have questions.
So should we schedule that before I do the survey results or after I do the survey results?
We'll have that. We may have to talk about the timing. In fact, we normally go in and out of a meeting. So, I mean, again, some kind of Zoom wizard is going to have to figure this out because I don't think I'm up to the task. They're going to have.
Yeah, we'll actually have a separate Zoom link that you folks can log into. That'll be a whole different Zoom meeting, and then you'll zoom out of that and click back on the link to come into this meeting. So yeah, we've done a little bit of research into it. I think we'll be able to pull it off, hopefully.
Okay, good enough. All right, then, in there, no new business that you know of, right? Okay. And I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Bob Pape,
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
anybody want to second that? Mr. Neal? I think Mr. Neal seconded it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, then I'll use.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Second.
Meeting's adjourned.
Everybody have a good evening.